morning. The first one is entitled Journeying with Communities, a community engagement and organizing handbook for university extension workers. To give an overview of the manual, as well as introduce the co-authors, I now present to you the lead author, Professor Mark Anthony D. Abinir.
Good morning, everyone. We are delighted that you are here with us in this book launch. Special thanks to the UST Vice Rector, Reverend Father Isaias Chonko OP, for gracing this event with his presence, and to Professor Dr. Michael Anthony Vasco, the Dean of the UST Graduate School, for being with us. I would also like to thank the Director of CCPED, Associate Professor Jocelyn Agkawili, for being with us in this journey and for organizing this book launch. And of course, our gratitude to the Commission on Higher Education for funding this entire initiative. As we already know, we are faced with a world grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic that has brought about significant social and economic challenges and changes for all. An alarming news is the COVID-19 is just one of anticipated pandemics that will continue to occur in the future, coupled with the increasing frequency, unless we put our acts together to work towards sustainable development. It is within this context that the public and social mission of higher education has become increasingly important. Many higher education institutions around the world are seeking ways and actively engaging to address the unprecedented situation we all find ourselves in. HEIs do this in a varied number of ways, but an underlying integrated function remains. That is, fulfilling its key social role in providing education, producing research, and promoting positive social change through community engagement and various forms of extension services. This handbook, which is Journeying with Communities, a community engagement and organizing handbook for university extension workers, highlights the public and social mission of higher education through community engagement, a term that serves both as a noun, worthy of an HEI-specific definition, and as a verb that brings forth the important use of participatory action research, or PAR, and community organizing for community development, or COCD. However, the unique contribution of this handbook is that it specifically situates HEI community engagement within the unique historical context of the Philippines, thus adding a Philippine voice in the literature of community-engaged scholarship. It also provides activity exercises and case studies where readers can situate themselves and apply the theories, concepts, and tools that they have learned so that they can enhance the community engagement programs and projects of their respective colleges and universities. On one hand, this handbook is primarily for administrators, faculty members, or extension workers in HEIs who can either be already actively involved, if not, are interested to learn more about the third pillar of higher education. This third pillar is often generally termed as extension services in the country. But this handbook argues the use of a more appropriate nomenclature, which is community engagement, a term that highlights the importance of HEIs to journey with communities while observing the principles of partnership, collaboration, reciprocity, and mutual beneficial exchange of knowledge and resources within the nexus of PAR and COCD. On the other hand, this handbook is also for readers and learners outside the academe, such as government agencies, non-government organizations, civil society organizations, faith-based groups, and even people's organizations who wish to partner or already have active partnerships with HEIs when it comes to social, cultural, political, and economic transformation engagements. This will give them a unique and in-depth understanding of the integrated role of teaching, research, and community engagement of HEIs in the aforementioned partnership interventions. Let me now introduce the authors and consultant of the Journeying with Communities Handbook. So first, I serve as the lead author in this handbook, and with me are the following co-authors. First is Assistant Professor Froilan Alipa, who is now the current director of the UST Simbahayan Community Development Office. Assistant Professor Alipa is also a faculty member of the UST's Department of Sociology. Second is Ms. Abigail Marta S. Abelardo, who is currently an Office Assistant for Community Development and Program Development Officer at the UST Simbahayan Community Development Office. Lastly, third is Dr. Melanie D. Turingan, who is a faculty member of UST's Department of History and currently serves as UST's Assistant Registrar. We also have with us in our handbook our consultant, Ma'am Evervencia Legaspi Ligutom, whom her colleagues fondly call as Ma'am Emmy. She is the immediate past director of the Office of Community Engagement and Service Learning, former Silliman University Extension Program, and the former director of the Institute of Service Learning at Silliman University. She is also a former faculty and a longtime chair of the Social Work Department of Silliman University. At this juncture, the authors will now read the abstract of the modules they have contributed in the Journeying with Communities Handbook. Let us begin with Dr. Melanie Turingan.
Pleasant morning, everyone. I will present to you the abstract of the first module entitled History of Community Organizing in the Philippines. This module will provide the reader a brief discussion of key terminologies associated with the basics of community, the etymology, how commonly community is defined, and what makes up its elements. In addition, the module will also impart the basic information about community organizing. So as learners, one is able to appreciate the beginnings on how institutions organize its partner communities. This part of the module will also showcase the beginnings of community organizing in the Philippines, coinciding with the unfolding of our nation's history. Furthermore, it will cover the periods of Philippine history and essential information that highlight the rise of community organizing and, most importantly, people's participation. As community extension workers, faculty members who are into community organizing, it is essential to understand the elements and dynamics of a community and how community organizing evolved as a method of collective community action. In summary, Module 1 covers the following topics: definition of community, elements that make up the community, the basics of community organizing, skills needed for a community organizer, and lastly, a brief and comprehensive history of community organizing in the Philippines. Once again, that is Module 1. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you, Dr. Melanie Turingan. Let us now go to the second module. Module 2 serves as the foundation for the understanding of community engagement in the context of higher education. As faculty members or extension workers, it is vital for all of us to have a good grasp of this module since it deals with community engagement that is sensitive to the unique needs and conditions of a higher education setting. In higher education, you need not only consider partner communities as your stakeholders, but you must include administrators, faculty members, students, and other academic and administrative personnel as important stakeholders in your community engagement efforts. This module covers topics on the definition of community engagement, history of community engagement in Philippine higher education, the principles of community engagement, which is anchored on the discipline of community development, community participation and partnership in community engagement, and lastly, the process of institutionalizing community engagement in higher education. By going through these topics, you will be able to bring all your stakeholders together into a coherent understanding of community engagement and unified actions that are complementary to the teaching and research thrust of higher education. In this way, community engagement can be further institutionalized in your educational institution. Next one is Module 3. Module 3 introduces you to the unique role of research and scholarship in the context of a community-engaged higher educational institution. Specifically, it begins with the basic understanding of and the nuances involved in community-engaged research in terms of low, moderate, and high engagement. Then it zeroes in on the use of participatory action research as a holistic approach in community-engaged research in observance of the core principles of community engagement previously discussed in Module 2. PAR, or Participatory Action Research, is further subdivided into its 4 core processes, focusing on participatory rapid appraisal in the conduct of community assessments, participatory impact pathways analysis, or PIPA, for the design of community engagement projects, participatory implementation and management, or PIM, PIM, for the implementation of community engagement plans. And lastly, participatory monitoring and evaluation, or PME, for the assessment of community engagement projects of programs to inform the designs of future initiatives. The module ends with a discussion of community-engaged scholarship and the important role of disseminating the results of your research to an academic audience and the wider public. This module is crucial for you as a faculty member and extension worker to be able to learn the ropes in bridging the progressive service mission of higher educational institutions and their expected traditional academic roles, such as teaching and research. Let us now proceed to Modules 4 and 5 with Assistant Professor Froilan Alipa.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Good morning. May I now present to you the abstract of the Module 4 with the title Community Organizing and Partnership Building. For the abstract, community organizing or community or CO is a core method or process in community development. CO is a natural social practice of communities and social movements from different societies to facilitate and engage with people to organize themselves in their respective communities. Without it, one cannot genuinely engage in developing communities. As mentioned in Module 1, the CO process involves the following steps, which may overlap and be repeated at new level during the process of organizing. Entry to the community, integration with the community study analysis, spotting of potential leaders, core group formation, setting up of organization, community action and mobilization, and managing, strengthening, and sustaining the community organization. After the community is organized, it does not mean that the organizing process stops there. To be fully empowered community, they should establish their own participatory dynamics and mechanisms in all levels, in spheres and planning, implementation, monitoring, and reflection, action, reflection, praxis. While partnership building is essential to community organizing for the empowerment of communities, it is a mutual relationship that is characterized by the willingness and ability to share sources of power, such as ideas, knowledge, experiences, services, informations, decisions, policies, tasks, skills, actions, and accountability. It is a continuing level up of community organizing within and outside the community. The local groups, together with the support groups, can make an ideal scenario for local or community development. This will involve the need for new perspectives, strategies, approaches, and skills in promoting partnership in participatory local governance geared toward local and community development. Partnership building and for local and participatory governance can facilitate the break the wall of exclusivity of development and to make it inclusive. In this module, the participants will be able to define community organizing and partnership building in their importance in community engagement and development, explain the foundations of community organizing, such as its principles, steps, guidelines, and considerations, apply the concepts and approaches and practices of partnership in the local communities, and relate salient points, ethics, importance of local community and participatory governance as a frame of reference for better partnership building and engagement in the community. You can also present an analysis about the situation and relationship building and engagement in the community towards local governance. You can also formulate guidelines and recommendations in building, in establishing, and maintaining an effective partnership among local and external support groups for participatory governance based on your experience and what you have learned from the discussions. And lastly, you can devise a community organizing action plan that can be implemented and considered by the university or your school in working and engaging with partner communities towards development and empowerment. While for the Module 5, with the title Community Leadership and Organizational Development. Community leadership requires and aims for authentic community empowerment, development, and sustainability. Community leaders have better, if not the best, understanding of the realities of their communities. Therefore, they can see how things can be improved and can bring together people to move towards the vision. In the journey of community organizations, they can discover, rediscover, and reconceptualize, reform, and theorize a lot about leadership. It is learned, grasped, and processed in different conditions to become tool for what is intended for holistic, participatory, and collective development. Community leadership and organization must be supported by organizational development with preference to organizational development for social change, or ODSC, as it offers holistic framework while acknowledging the significance and exceptionality of each quadrant and approach of ODSC. It is better to undertake the power of meeting and dynamics of blending of all approaches. Community organizing values actions, and organizational development values process. CO cannot uphold its own without building participatory and democratic process or power analysis. Same thing with power analysis. It depends on the participation and collective action of the community organization to enable people or members to be involved in critical social context analysis and trust in the capabilities of people, community members, and community organization to reflect, learn, and change the relationships to the context of realities in order to create social change. So for this, I'm happy to present as part of this handbook, the module 4 and 5. Magandang umaga at mabuhay po kayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Froilan Alipaw. Let us now proceed now to the contributor for Module 6, Ms. Abigail Martha Abelardo.
A blessed day to us all. Let me present to you the background of Module 6 of our Journeying with the Communities Handbook entitled Community Engagement and Organizing, Case Studies and Analysis. In this module, the learner will be able to apply the lessons learned from the entire study to actual cases in the communities, sectors, and institutions. They will also be able to discuss specific dynamics in the field of community engagement and formulate strategies on how to manage them. It will also allow them to identify and discuss the roles and possible contributions of stakeholders in a community by conducting a stakeholder analysis. Also, it will allow them to explore possible gender relationships within the community and its impact by doing a gender analysis. And this module the learner will be able to present challenges obtained in a chosen community and formulate desirable conditions that may stem from it through the use of a problem tree and objectives tree diagrams. As a whole, Module 6 of this handbook provides the opportunity for the actual application of lessons learned in the entire study with respect to the cases that will be presented and analyzed. Being extension workers, it is important for the learners to be able to apply what they learned from the previous modules in the handbook to actual scenarios in the community engagement field. This particular module presents 4 cases. Except for one, the rest are fictional. These fictional cases reflect actual scenarios to be studied and evaluated covering community stakeholder situations, a community profile, community scenarios, and institutional or organizational mechanisms. Going through this module will orient the learners to actual dynamics in the field of community engagement and enable them to think of possibilities on dealing with them. By this, their community engagement may be more rooted and their strategies may be more sensitive to actual scenarios that they may encounter as they go through their work as community engaged faculty members or extension workers. With this, we humbly present to you Journeying with the Communities, a community engagement and organizing handbook for university extension workers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Abby. And I would like again to thank my fellow co-authors, Dr. Melanie Toringan, Assistant Professor Froilan Alipaw, and Ms. Abigail Martha S. Abelarda, and of course, our consultant, Ma'am Emmy Leguto. We look forward for our readers to get hold a copy of the book, either physically or digitally, and we hope that you learn much from it. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our authors of the Community Engagement and Organizing Handbook. We give you a big virtual congratulations, and we thank all the collaborators who made this possible. Now, the manuals, as Director Agkawidi said earlier, have as part of their history the in-person certificate courses held in UST. In fact, several of our attendees here in the Zoom meeting, as well as those watching via Facebook Live, were graduates of the said certificate courses. At this point, we will take a look at a video montage about the certificate course on community engagement and organizing, and this will be followed by the voices that will give even more meaning to the images we will see in the montage. After the video montage, we will listen to the testimonies of 2 graduates of the program. Let's watch these presentations.
The Certificate on Community Engagement and Organizing helped me to become more efficient and effective community development worker. Not only that, it also provided a clear direction as to lead the community extension programs and services of our university. It helped me always reflect the practice that I am doing in our community extension programs and services to ensure that I facilitate people's empowerment the right way, following the principles and values of community development. Thank you to the Commission on Higher Education and the University of Santo Tomas for providing us with the opportunity to learn and unlearn, and also to meet new people in the network of community engagement and organizing in the field of higher education institutions. God bless!
Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Ang St. Louis University po sa Baguio City ay lubos na nagpapasalamat po sa UST Simbahayan CCPED Training na kami po ay naging kabahagi ng pagkasanay na ito. Mula pa sa pagkasanay na ito, nakabuo po ang aming pamantasan ng isang makabuluhan at mas malalim na community engagement system na hanggang sa kasalukuyan ay ginagamit po namin. Ang programang ito po na aming nabuo mula po sa naging pag-aaral po namin sa UST ay pinagpatuloy po ng aking kahaliling direktor na si Binibining Charmaine P. Mendoza, ang bago pong direktor ng Community Extension and Outreach Programs Office.
Lubos po tayong nagagala sa pagsasanay na naibahagi na aking predecessor, Dr. Joselito Gutierrez, dahil mula sa kanyang mga naging pagsasanay ay lalo naming napalalim ang aming pakikipag-ugnayan hindi lamang dito sa loob ng ating pamantasan, maging sa labas, lalo-lalo na sa ating komunidad kung saan nagkaroon ng tinatawag na rapid rural appraisal, isa sa mga highlight ng kanyang pag-aaral na siya namang nagbigay ng papuri at mas malalim na ugnayan hindi lamang ng ating paaralan kundi ang ating pakikipag-ugnayan lalo-lalo na sa nagkakaisang komunidad.
Maraming salamat po UST at sana'y marami pa po kayong masanay na mga paaralan upang mas maging malawak po ang ugnayan ng paaralan at sa kanilang mga komunidad. Maraming salamat.
Once more, congratulations to the authors, the collaborators, and the graduates for community engagement and organizing. We now proceed to the second publication to be launched this morning. I have engagement and organizing, as well as for student affairs and services. We'll likewise give this chance to our audience members to maybe raise questions or clarifications to the UST CCPED. Looking at the chat box so far, and please type in your questions in the chat box should you have any. Kindly address them to the panelists. Okay. So looking at the chat box that we've had so far this morning, a lot of messages of congratulations, a lot of expressions of appreciation. Okay, especially coming from the graduates of the program who are having also their virtual reunion today. Now, I did see one question, and this is pertaining to accessing the copies, okay, of the said books. So is it all right if I give this question to Associate Professor Agkawili as to how our participants and their respective institutions can get copies of the manuals?
Thank you, Sir Philip, and thank you for the question. Okay, so the hard copies of the book will be distributed to the different HEIs all over the country, and it will be sent by courier. Okay, so for those who would like to avail of the copy of the book for their respective schools, please register in the Google Forms, the link of which will be in the chat box. Okay, so again, I would like to emphasize that these hard copies are for the schools. Okay, so that it may be shared by all members of that school for their student affairs practitioners and also for their community extension workers. Okay, because these are limited copies. However, there are also e-copies or the PDF version of the manuals, which will be uploaded or is actually already uploaded in the UST website. Okay, so the link to this will be also provided in the chat box. I hope that everyone who would like to avail of copies of the book will be able to do so both in hard copy and in PDF version. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Agkawili. Now, we received a question here from Marisa Figueroa, and this is addressed to the Community Engagement and Organizing team. I'd like to read the question raised by Ms. Figueroa. I am also working on the institutionalization of our community engagement in Pampanga. I'd like to know how the handbook can be of help in our institution, for instance, in our strategic planning and sustainability of our extension program, particularly during a pandemic. So may I address this question to Dr. Abinir and his team?
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the question, Sister Marisa. And I know the value of your question in terms of institutionalization because that is one of the aspects that we have discussed in the certificate course. So as you would see, part of the module is still giving the rubric of understanding how do we institutionalize the community engagement programs of our university. So it begins with, as you would see here, there must be a core. It must be incorporated in the mission and vision of the university. There is a faculty support, student support. The voices of the community is integral to decision making. And of course, there is a part of the funding and the structural support, financial support given by the university. And I understand, even in this time of the pandemic, it is a challenge to be on the ground and to be with our partner communities. Hence, as higher education institutions, we must be able to become innovative in our practices. Although limited, what we can do is through online engagements. However, there is one aspect that I would like to focus on to be able to sustain the institutionalization of community engagement in higher educational institutions. It must be integrated in the teaching and research functions of the university. It must not be a separate one. Because sometimes it could be sacrificed. Now, for example, I have seen universities and schools totally forgetting their community engagement or isinantabi muna dahil kasi hindi makalabas yung mga estudyante. So community engagement program suffer. But if it is incorporated in the teaching and research functions of the university, then that is where the sustainability of the institutionalization comes in. Thus, in Module 4, this is something that we have not discussed in the certificate course, but it is an added knowledge. As you would see here, CHED redefined extension through CMO number 52 series of 2016, where it states that the extension is about the systematic transfer of technology and innovation of information generated by HEIs, and its partner to seek solutions to specific development concerns. It is a purpose-specific, target-specific, need-specific program of action utilizing the best available data, science, and evidence from a range of disciplines to inform systematic approaches to development solutions. So there must be a very integral part of the role of research and the role of teaching in our community engagement programs. So luckily, I provided here a rubric on how to do that. So you will see that in Module 4. So what are the things that we need to do to be able to sustain our community engagement efforts using these different criteria and different descriptions to guide us to be able to see how do we really incorporate community engagement with teaching and research. So whatever happens, it will be the core function of the university because it is part of the learning of the students and is part of the scholarship of the faculty. So that is my answer to your question.
Thank you, Doc Mark. We also received a question here from Mr. Antonino Tobias IV, and this is addressed to Dr. Melanie Turingan. How will the history of community organizing as reflected in the handbook, I think that's Module 1 of the handbook, help university extension workers improve their quality of service?
Thank you for the question, Sir Nino. For Module 1, you will be presented with a brief history of the Philippines, simultaneous to how people's participation rose. In this manner, as we all know, history is understanding the past in order to have to be useful in the present and to have a better future. So knowing the beginnings and development of community organizing simultaneous to the history of the Philippines, extension workers will be able to assess and reflect on the events that led to people to organize, and the result of this may be of help in the present situation in decision making of the extension workers, and especially in their course of action to take. So that's my take on it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Turigan. Conclude our session with the playing of the University of Santo Tomas hymn.